time has finally come for me to rank the MCU movies. With the release of Guardians Volume 3, it seems like we've reached a point to rank them all, considering this was the last release I really cared for. Don't be upset with my ranking, as it is purely based on personal preference. I'd love to hear your own ranking down below, or even a quick comment on your own favorite movie. Now let's get to it. I swear I've seen this movie 3 times, and I cannot for the life of me remember the plot. It's the first movie I fell asleep to when it comes to Marvel movies. I just battled through them during binges with friends. It's known as the worst, and it definitely is. There is no real pop to this movie. I love Brie Larson, but she is as stale as a chip under my car seat in this film. It's upsetting, yet the truth. The story is a bit lackluster, but at least I can recall the plot. Other than that, it's whatever. The fact that they made Nick Fury lose his eye to a cat is infuriating. Ant-Man 2 is noticeably worse due to being connected to the MCU and the wider Marvel universe, which forces it to work around the continuity established in Civil War, which takes time away from jokes and character development. There's a jarring scene at the very end of the movie which contributes to the drastic shift in tone. Not a fan. This is already bad by the fact that it takes place after Civil War and following the flawless endgame. There are a few baffling moments which stand out in the film. The Russian prison break ends up causing the deaths of hundreds of prisoners, yet it's never referenced again. And in the final battle, a group of trained super assassins obligingly line up and attack Black Widow one by one rather than immediately gaining up on her and beating her down. It gave us some fun characters, but that's it. For a movie that starts Phase 5 and introduces the big bad in his first movie since Loki, we were hit with the most mediocre Marvel movie ever. This isn't an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie. This is a Kane movie trying to be an Ant-Man movie while also showing that Cassie is there along with Wasp, who barely speaks. It is rough, and for Marvel to try and say Kane is this huge big bad villain to look out for, to then get taken out by ants, is ridiculous. Perfect example of a strong character doubling down on the main heroes for writing purposes. The plot is silly and by the book, and I found the Asgard stuff more interesting than the Earthbound plot. There's slight humor from the fish out of water elements on Earth, but it feels quite bogged down within the MCU world building and romantic subplot with Jane Foster. I used to like Thor a lot, but rewatching this made me realize it is a bottom tier Marvel movie. With decent humor and a couple of good action scenes, the Monaco racetrack fight looked great. Overall, number 2 falls rather flat. Feeling rushed in some parts, trying too hard to cram content into a 2-hour film, this movie doesn't really push Tony's arc any further than the first film. I always loved Incredible Hulk a bit more than it should be loved. It was one of the first DVDs I bought with my own money, and I would rewatch constantly. I can understand why people forget this exists in the MCU, as there is hardly anything that represents what the MCU is today. I think this is a solid take on the grounded Hulk film, but it does feel a bit weird compared to every other MCU movie. Many people will start to get upset with my list now, but like I said, this is personal preference. Personally, I was disappointed with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. While it is a solid superhero flick with a strong visual sensibility and well-balanced ambition, there's not enough to make this film feel truly original or deep, but it is highly entertaining and a little on the dark side of humor. Rewatching this allowed me to bump it above Doctor Strange 2 because I accepted they approached the goofy side rather than going dark like I had hoped before. Love and Thunder is a cool chapter of this multifaceted universe, a chapter that I will gladly revisit time and again. A beautiful and funny story of love and friendship. I still wish Gore was a more prominent character given the glimpse into the journey of him slaughtering gods, but other than that I can accept the simple story of Thor finding himself again. Here we go. Haters gonna hate. Black Panther may be a fan favorite, but sorry, I just never loved it. I think the story is a bit generic. I enjoy the characters, and upon multiple rewatches, I have enjoyed the movie more, but I really don't love the third act. I think if Black Panther wasn't rushed to be put in theaters, then I may enjoy it more, but the quality of everything feels forced and unfinished. I appreciate the story of Doctor Strange. Scott Derrickson's film is admittedly formulaic when it comes to storytelling, but it's arguably the most inventive and unique entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, especially when it comes to effects and visuals. It still delivers entertaining action sequences, campy characters, witty banter, and terrific performances by the lead and supporting actors. Ant-Man is a smaller superhero film, but it charms and excites on a larger scale. Its moments of humor collide neatly with its action set pieces and the film's themes surrounding both personal redemption and the relationships between parents and their children add a tug at the heartstrings. Paul Rudd is perfect as Ant-Man. Too bad the sequels didn't live up to the first film. Shang-Chi is the second movie on this list that I have only watched once next to Quantumania, but something about it felt truly special to the Marvel world that I can't deny. Shang-Chi feels like a product of years of other cult classics and action masterpieces that have influenced the genre it's stepping into. The characters feel fresh for the MCU, and I am excited to see more of this superhero in the future. I feel like this movie gets too much hate. Iron Man 3 was a perfect entry in the MCU. The tone is a pretty big departure, not just from previous films in the Iron Man series, but of all the films that came before it. Somehow it all works. It proves superhero films don't need to be as gritty or edgy or dark to be taken seriously. The script is superbly written, specifically when it comes to Stark's arc. I always enjoyed Age of Ultron more than my friends, but I can agree it is the lesser of the Avengers films. You should know what to expect from a Marvel film by this point, and Avengers Age of Ultron certainly doesn't disappoint. It's only by comparison to its predecessor that this film lags behind and feels a little bit bloated, while at the same time feeling like a couple of the jigsaw pieces are missing from the box. Intense action sequences, wonderful wit, and charismatic characters all help craft a near complete package in this entertaining movie. In a nutshell, as an easygoing, casual, and hilarious summer adventure, Far From Home is the perfect counterpart to the melancholy and monumentally high stakes of Avengers Endgame. The movie manages to be more clever and better integrated into the overall structure of the MCU than it seems at first. It unfolds increasingly complex twists and surprises viewers up until the very last scene, leading us to No Way Home. It feels small compared to Infinity War and Endgame, and that's great. I love seeing these characters meet for the first time. It's simple. You take a bunch of the characters I like and put them in a room together. That's what most of this movie is, and that's why I like it so much. The action is great and all, but it's those little moments that keep me returning. I have grown to love this movie more and more over the years. Wakanda Forever was such a beautiful and emotional tale within the MCU that I did not expect to love it as much as I did. With all the discourse about Lakita Wright behind the scenes, I did not know how I would feel about her becoming Black Panther, but this sequel made me love her. Namor is also the best new villain / character we have received in the new phase of the MCU by far. I cannot wait to see more of him and Shuri as our new Panther. The only reason it is a bit far down on my list is because on a rewatch, it has no need to be almost 3 hours long. The first Avenger is definitely one of the more underrated films in the MCU, especially considering that its sequels in The Winter Soldier and Civil War are such big hitters and end up overshadowing it, but the reason why is understandable. I think next to the Guardians trilogy, this has a spot at being one of the best in the entirety of the MCU. It feels like a grounded war story, and that is why I love it. Many people hate on Eternals, and honestly the hate is overrated. I can't see people's defense on why they hate it, I just can't. This is a beautiful movie that takes its time to show us these group of characters that have been behind the scenes, and I enjoyed it along with my girlfriend. It is one of my favorites from the new phases. The villain is kind of trash, but other than that, the dynamic between the cast, the cinematography, and score all work well to bring us a heartwarming MCU film. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is just as great as its predecessor. I remember saying this was slightly better than the first one at some point, and while I love both movies a lot, I honestly prefer the first movie slightly more to this one after rewatching. I will never forget seeing this in theaters though, and having a smile on my face for the entire runtime. God, I'm gonna miss the Guardians. The Final 10. Civil War was such a big hit when it was released, and rightfully so. What makes Civil War such an accomplishment is the way it takes what could have been an overwhelming, overcrowded story and instead transforms it into an examination of who these heroes are, their morals, and what impact they've had in the world. It's vastly different from its comic counterpart, and for some, that'll ultimately disappoint, yet for me, it once again highlights just how brilliant the MCU is, changing stories to fit the universe while still keeping their core values at its forefront. I loved Homecoming more than I can describe, and it holds a special place in my heart. The creators had a good idea to skip the familiar origin story and directly jump into a fresh new adventure. The blend of a coming-of-age film and superhero movie works really well. The humor is on point, and the action set pieces are exciting and memorable, with the ferry and the Washington Monument sequences being the highlights. The climactic action sequence is a bit generic in comparison, but the emotional stakes make up for it. I'll never forget Michael Keaton opening up that door. This was the movie that people thought would kill the MCU, but instead skyrocketed it. Guardians of the Galaxy almost feels like an accident by modern standards, the type of film in which everything lined up just right to achieve the perfect outcome. Guardians is really what made them an unstoppable force, in my opinion. It proved that for those first 3 phases, Marvel could just take about any character, no matter how obscure, and make them a household name, and we really do have James Gunn and his amazing team to thank for it. Iron Man is a great setup for the MCU and provides a weight and realism for everything to launch from. Without Iron Man, we wouldn't have 30 plus movies that touch millions of people's hearts. It's the perfect kickstart to this beloved franchise that still holds up incredibly well. And come on, Robert Downey Jr. made the comeback of his lifetime. He is inseparable from Stark. This got pushed back a bit after a rewatch, but I still love this movie. It is the perfect conclusion to the first 3 phases, a perfect end to some of our characters. This Renaissance painting of comic book stories come to life changed so many lives, and it brought many people together. I literally sobbed opening night and immediately saw it again the next morning with my best friend. Endgame is everything the MCU built towards, and it was executed perfectly. What Endgame did for the MCU, No Way Home did for Spider-Man movies. No Way Home is a comprehensive masterpiece and one of the most successful storytelling achievements ever produced. It is the most well-done fan service I've seen. Call me biased or whatever, but I don't care because this is exactly what I wanted from this film. No Way Home is the perfect celebration of Spider-Man as a character, as well as all the entries that came before this. Joe and Anthony Russo's The Winter Soldier, with its blistering action and robust story threads, is a superhero film of truly high caliber, entertaining and spectacularly full of action. The Winter Soldier is riveting, combining the narrative stuff of political thrillers with the gripping set pieces of great action cinema. The film is fast, fully developed, and appealing, crafted with skill and polish. It is a grand superhero effort. Thor Ragnarok is yet another MCU film that has set a precedent other comic book films only hope to achieve. It is a masterpiece, and it revitalized Thor, helping set up the epic journey that follows. It was the best decision to take the Thor franchise in another direction, and I'm happy Taika got to direct this. I think he did a great job balancing comedy with tragedy. The movie is gorgeous to look at, and the action scenes some of the best in the MCU. I can watch this over and over again, and it never gets old. Yes, this just came out, and I've seen it twice, and I can happily say it is one of my favorites. This is the perfect ending to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and out of all the movies in the MCU, the Guardians trilogy feels the most whole. There is a clear and original vision throughout all 3 films, and it is sad to see James Gunn leave the MCU, but DC fans should be happy, because we will be getting a juggernaut. It is a heartwarming and heart-wrenching tale that gives our closure to each and every Guardian, where we feel complete and fulfilled. This took everything out of me, and that just shows how invested I was in it. I love it, and it will forever be an MCU movie that I go back to. This is the best. It really is. Hands down, no debates. Avengers Infinity War pulls absolutely no punches. It is a masterclass in story, character, and spectacle. The way it manages to juggle multiple characters and storylines, balancing them with the utmost precision to make the whole as coherent as it could possibly be, is utterly stunning. I laughed, I cried, I gasped, I jumped, I cheered. I fucking love this movie, and it never gets old. At the end of the day, I think this is the best MCU movie because the villain wins, and that brings so much character-driven story to the universe that we really never got before. I remember seeing it opening night and leaving the theater and turning to my best friend and saying, if the MCU were to stop tomorrow and this was how it ended, I would be happy.
I'm sorry, little one.
What did it cost?
Everything.
Tune in every Friday for new movie videos. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment down below what other movies you would like me to do videos on. Thank you, Mom, for editing the scripts for my movie essays. I appreciate you. Till next time, thanks for watching. Catch you on the flip side.